Welcome back to the Sounds of the Baskerville. I'm with Chris. How are you, Chris?
Morning, James.
Yeah, good to see you here today with your matching anorak with me, our train spotting outfits on. So, yes, you can tell, dear listener, that we've queued up today. Today we're going to talk about, well, not so much train spotting. So I've just not too far ago caught the train from Brisbane to Longreach with my father. That was a good trip. It was good fun to go out to Longreach and hang out and do the aviation museum and all that kind of stuff. So aviation, hold that thought. But the thing I was really interested to kind of understand is in your many case studies that you've been sharing us over the episodes of The Sounds of the Baskerville, the archetypal, the ultimate train smash, where the thing goes off the rails at the front and then the carriages all behind all get destroyed, all the stuff that's in them gets thrown everywhere, and if there's an oil tanker or two, they explode and they start a bushfire. Like, we're talking a real shamozzle.
Real train smash.
Real train smash. So can you think of anything in your experience either gone past or even, something that's still bubbling along?
Yeah, I think if we're talking train smash, it just reminds me of an issue that I'm currently dealing with at the moment where the business was in aviation, run by obviously a director. The director, unfortunately, was in a position where he would be the intermediary between, say, a private jet and the customer. So if you as a customer wanted to hire a private jet, you go through this fellow. He then books the pilots and planes and all sorts of stuff.
Be that, and this is scenarios where be that either private transport or be it for passengers, or I imagine there are also businesses that will do private consignments of goods and things like that.
Yeah, private freight as well. Yep.
So it's kind of like a private arranger.
Correct. Okay. So, and what obviously happened during, this whole pandemic and lockdowns and things like that is obviously that freedom of movement of goods and people has been hampered. So one of the customers happened to pay a good chunk of change to this fellow for a private jet. This fellow's then forwarded that money onto the freight forwarder. Of course, lockdown happens and the customer wants their money back and the guy doesn't have it. And this guy's saying, well, but the freight forwarders have got all the money, but they're not refunding the money because of this pandemic. So we're in a position where the customer wants their money back. The guy that's taken the money doesn't have it, and the one that ultimately does have is, let's just call it our freight forwarder.
So is there a kind of lesson one before we move on about something around agency agreements, trust accounts, travel trust account? Because if the guy's got no money in his terms and conditions, this doesn't sound like it's going to end well.
No, that's right. And I think, did he disclose that when you pay your money, it will not be refunded? Those sorts of things.
Yeah,
so
right.
your terms and conditions start to...
Did you bring down some coin because you've got to get some freight sent somewhere? You're hoping
move
to fly
some people around.
Or fly your mates down for a golf holiday, or hens trip up to the Whitsundays or something. You want to think that you're going to get your money back if you can't do it.
Yeah, that'd be the logical choice. Or alternatively, hey, you've got some version of credit that you can then apply into the future, And I remember I booked a trip to Europe last year. Of course, the COVID hits, the whole world goes into lockdown.
That was optimistic last year.
It was. Oh, sorry. It was scheduled for last year, paid for the year before.
I was about to say, that was... that's like throwing it all on black. But anyway, here you go, off you go.
But of course, one of the options were when the flight couldn't be delivered because of the pandemic, I had an option as a customer. Do I want to get the refund in cash, get the refund in credit, or do you want to rebook a flight for when we actually do go in the future? And of course, I was the pessimistic liquidator. I said, well, I actually don't. I think there's a lot of airlines going to go broke here. If I held it in credit with an airline, it's likely I'm going to lose all my money. So I said to them, look, politely, I'll just take my money back, please. And thankfully, they gave it back to me. But in this scenario, that didn't happen.
If you think about business, we've talked about, do you have the right model of business? If you're advertising and passing yourself off as a person who's going to fly people around in private jets, a lot of people who want those have got access to quite a bit of money. Yeah, and they don't typically like losing it.
Well, that is actually a good point.
And so I would describe that as risky. But anyway,
well, that's a good point. This fellow should have been thinking about what happens in those circumstances where travel can't be arranged. How do we get the money back? But also firming up his relationships with his suppliers, which is the freight forwarding entities or the human passenger private jet entities, making sure that in an event like a lockdown, they've got to give their money back, so then I can then give it back to the customer. And maybe in his modelling, he's missed that small, minute piece of detail. So naturally, like you said, this customer that may or may not be quite well off sued this fellow for the refund of the monies, and then pushed it all the way to the point where he ended up liquidating this guy's company by a court order. And
so he would have sent through a creditor statutory demand or something?
Yeah, statutory demand, that expired, then go and wind up the company because now the company is deemed insolvent and the court has to...
So how's that work? If his lawyers say, hey, we need to find somebody, rather than go to court and say just choose somebody like cab rank.
Yeah, it's not that random, James. So if I'm the creditor and I'm chasing your company, James, not that this would ever happen, but let's say I'm the creditor chasing you, creditor's statutory demand, you fail to adhere to it, I then apply to the court to liquidate your company, I get to pick the liquidator that's going to go in to do the job.
Right, okay.
Of course, the liquidator must consent in writing to take it on, but effectively, like they say in the industry, you pick your executioner.
Chris is a nice fellow. It's one of those things we've talked before. It's like the Hulk. Don't make him angry. You wouldn't like him when he's angry. But when he's in a good mood, he's certainly, and we thank you for sharing your experience with us. So we've got this scenario where what could possibly go wrong has so far gone wrong. He hasn't got the proper setup, hasn't really got what sounds like a really robust business model to start with, hasn't done a lot of the terms and conditions, management of cash thing, and now he's really hacked off somebody who wants his money, rightly, wants his dough back, and, is savvy enough to know what to do to get it. Approach someone like yourself and say, hey, how I get my dough off this character who has taken my money. And
it's kind of like, I've often said to people, if there's any bill there that you think you need to pay, make sure you pay the lawyers, because the lawyers, it doesn't cost them that much money to actually go and sue you and wipe you out, because it's only their time costs.
So what do you do in a situation? So the train smash happened. If it's the train driver's fault, most of the train drivers I've met aren't the sort of blokes or women who would run off into the bush. They go, hands up, for whatever reason, I thought the signal was red or there was a problem here, like they'll front up.
Yeah, correct. The honourable, the moral, the statutory reasons is if you have had your company wound up and it's gone to liquidation and the liquidator is now appointed, you have a duty under law to comply with the liquidator and provide all the books and records, deliver up all the assets in your possession, basically give the liquidator everything as though the liquidator is now in control of the company because the liquidator is.
Has this guy done that?
No, this guy has been evasive. He's trying to do everything he can not to deliver up. We've asked them repeatedly. And not only that, liquidators are asking people to comply. They're giving you statutory references that are very specific to the Act. And then, of course, there's severe penalties for non-complying. We're bringing all this to your attention. We're basically saying to you, please help us help you. We need to know everything about the company. We need all the records. That's critical. And we also need, your report on the affairs of the company. And of course, these things are all clearly laid out for directors. We have to give them, almost an inch thick amount of documents to say, look here, this is what we need, this is why we need it. Please comply. Because non-compliance now puts you in the position where we have to now report you to our regulator. In this case, it'll be ASIC. So effectively, this continued failure of non-complying with the liquidator's instructions causes basically a bigger brief to be issued to ASIC, who then use it against you as a director, sorts of wonderful penalties. We've
talked a lot on in Insolve panel discussions and videos and blogs and even these sessions about, you need a license to drive a car. You need to be able to prove that you can drive a car. So saying you're a director, go, I didn't realise I had to do all that. Oh, do I have to keep books and records? Yeah, you do. And there's law that says it. And, if you actually really annoy people enough and do enough bad things, it can be quite bad. Like, you could go to jail.
Well, yeah, there's some pretty severe penalties, and I think the terms used quite often, you see it in the Corporations Act, is offences of strict liability. Now, that's a fancy term that basically says, now look at the criminal code of the Commonwealth to find what that means. You're effectively committing something that can result in...
So being effectively on the run from you and not providing books and records, not providing the money in the first place, potentially running does he even have a proper business that's structured in a proper way? And, even compliant with some of the regulations in relation to the industries in which it's in. This looks like this could be a train smash.
Yeah, well, this is the other part of the train smash, and I'll just go back to one of your previous points is being a director. Sorry, there's an old saying we say in the profession, and that is ignorance is not a defence.
No.
So in other words, you can't rock up to the courthouse and go, "Oh, Your Honour, I didn't know." That's not a defence.
Yes, yeah.
What it is you as a director are deemed to know all of these duties and all of the, like everything, not only just Corporations Act issues, we're talking OH&S.
Yeah.
You know, you are deemed to know how to maintain a safe working environment for your employees. Whether you know that or not, you're just deemed to know. I often say to directors, the knowledge you need to have and what you're deemed to know, if I was to stack up the law books on this boardroom table to the ceiling, it would nearly reach the ceiling. Ignorance is not a defence.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in some of the pieces of law, even if you've got a whole lot of experts and policies and stuff, you're still ultimately on the hook.
You're on the hook, that's right.
Yeah.
So we're not complying with the directions of the liquidator. We're building a brief. We're about to get the regulator involved. But also, we then discover in our investigations that this fellow was also a bankrupt at the time of managing the corporation. And that's another big no-no.
I thought that's quite bad.
It is very bad, James.
Aren't you banned from running? Isn't it one of the main?
It is one of the main things. You are automatically disqualified at law from managing corporation. So this guy's a bankrupt. He's been managing this corporation, and then this fellow, in this whole period of the court filings and the liquidation of that, he's then gone and set up another company. So his first company's gone to liquidation.
Right.
He's still an undischarged bankrupt, and I'm going to set up another company again.
Right.
And we're just shaking our heads going, what is going on here? Like, you've tripped over once, and now you're basically setting yourself up for a failure again. Now, again, this then leads us to basically have to report all these things to, higher powers, so to speak. And, these higher powers do take umbrage to non-compliant directors, particularly those that are blatantly not complying with almost any legislation.
So the Australian Financial Security Authority, the people who kind of the ultimate managers of things such as bankruptcy, that they're not going to take kindly to an undischarged bankrupt.
Yeah.
That would be the words flagrant could come to mind, but certainly...
They often say that the Bankruptcy Act is the devil's spawn of the criminal code. So once upon a time, we used to go to jail for not paying our bills, right? So in other words, it was almost considered a crime to go bankrupt. Obviously, we've had to go, we can't throw people in jail anymore for not paying their debts because that's just not conducive of a full-blown market economy, particularly when you take out the income earner of a family and you whack them in jail. So we said, okay, well, you are forgiven for your debts, but you then have to give up realisable assets. That's the modern-day approach. But there are some elements in the Bankruptcy Act that have severe penalties. And I think they're deliberately there as a deterrent because you can't have people that have fallen over in bankruptcy, non-compliant with any legislation, still running around out there causing more financial harm.
So I don't want this bloke in a prison hulk floating in the Thames in squalor. But clearly it would be good if they came in from the cold, provided you with what you're asking for, if such existed, and cooperated. Is that how to get yourself out of it? I don't imagine you see too many people in that big a hole. But.
Sometimes, obviously we don't want to get into the deep dive into bankruptcy, but bankruptcy is not meant to keep you destitute.
Of course not.
We're not trying to kick you out of your house. We're not saying you can't have a fridge or a couch or bedding. You need certain elements to continue on with life, and you are actually entitled to go and get another job. So, we don't want to completely kneecap you as a human being. But there are some restrictions, and bankruptcy is considered, this is a financial restitution type process. In other words, we need you to recalibrate how you think about incurring debt. And this is your period of time to do it. What we don't want you to do is now go and incur debt, not tell anyone you're a bankrupt. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And we don't want you managing a corporation.
Yeah, so we'll cover directors. There's a few things that come up about who is the director of the company, because I would imagine when you're filling out the Form A, you'd have to tick, I am not a just undischarged bankrupt. So there's a few questions that I'd like to drill into a little bit more in another episode about, okay, that's awesome, but how the hell did this all happen? Good luck with this one.
Yeah,
sounds like it's going to be a bit of fun. It's not going to be a lot of fun for somebody. But anyway, thanks, Chris.
No, James.
See ya. A reminder that these podcasts are general in nature and do not constitute advice, and they don't take into account your personal circumstances. So if you think, though, that some of the issues raised might apply to you, you should seek qualified financial, legal or counselling advice.